Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving deep into the latest immigration updates. All this juicy intel is coming straight from the greencardforselfpetition.com weekly newsletter.
Yeah, they always have the inside scoop. It's like they have a direct line to USCIS or something.
Right. So, let's get right to it. First up, USCIS just revamped the International Entrepreneur Rule.
Oh, yeah. This is big, especially for those on temporary visas hoping to start a business here. They've adjusted the investment and revenue figures you need to meet.
Okay, so break it down for us. What are the new numbers?
Well, for initial applicants, the investment threshold is now a cool $311,071.
Wow, that's a hefty chunk of change.
It is. But you could also qualify with government grants or awards totaling at least $124,429. So there are options.
Gotcha. So it's not just about private investment anymore.
Exactly. But it gets even more interesting when you look at the requirements for reparole.
Reparole, that's basically like an extension to keep building your business, right?
Yep, you got it. And to snag that extension, your startup needs to really prove it's making moves.
Like, what kind of moves are we talking about?
Well, you need at least $622,142 in funding, or you need to have created at least 5 new jobs.
5 new jobs. Not bad.
Right. Or you could hit that same revenue figure, but you need a 20% annual growth rate on top of it.
So they're really looking for businesses that are on the upswing.
Absolutely. They want to see those hockey stick growth curves. Now, what about those investors? What do they need to show?
Yeah, good question. What's the bar for them?
Well, for investors, the minimum investment is a little higher, at least $746,571.
Got it. So they need to be pretty serious about their investments.
Yep. And here's the catch. That investment has to be spread across at least 2 different startups.
So they're encouraging diversification.
Exactly. And of course, those startups still need to meet those same job creation or revenue and growth targets we just talked about.
Okay, so it's a comprehensive approach. They're looking at the investors, the startups, the whole ecosystem.
Makes sense, right? USCIS wants to ensure those ventures are actually contributing to the economy.
Absolutely. Now let's move on to a different topic. There was a recent meeting between USCIS and AILA, the American Immigration Lawyers Association. Any juicy details from that?
Oh, yeah. This meeting was all about USCIS's push towards online filing and improving customer service.
Music to my ears. Anything specific?
Well, a whopping 17 high-volume forms are now available online.
17. Wow, that's a big chunk of their workload.
It is. Something like 41% of all cases are being handled digitally now.
Impressive. And what about those customer service improvements? Anything that'll make our lives easier?
They've rolled out a Connect to Live agent feature within their virtual assistant, Emma.
Oh, Emma. I've had my fair share of chatbot struggles, so hopefully this new feature will help.
Yeah, the goal is to make everything smoother for applicants, less waiting, less frustration. But, we'll have to see how it plays out in reality.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Right, now, let's talk about something that's probably on a lot of our listeners' minds, family-based immigration. Specifically, Form I-130.
The cornerstone of bringing loved ones to the U.S. Good one.
So just a quick reminder, what is Form I-130 all about?
It's all about establishing that all-important family relationship between the petitioner, the U.S. citizen or green card holder sponsoring the relative, and the beneficiary, the relative hoping to immigrate.
Right, it's like proving you're actually related and not just trying to game the system.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And the petitioner, they got to be a U.S. citizen, a lawful permanent resident, or a U.S. national to be eligible.
Got it. Any exceptions to that rule?
Well, there's one for Afghan nationals with relatives who weren't born in Afghanistan.
Okay, interesting. What's different for them?
They have to mail in their petition and request a fee exemption.
So, a bit of a different process there.
Yep. Now, let's say you meet all the requirements, you file the I-130, everything goes smoothly. Does that mean your relative gets their green card right away?
That's what I'm hoping. What's the verdict?
Not so fast. Getting that I-130 approved is a big win, but it's just the first hurdle cleared.
Okay, so it's not a guarantee of a green card.
Right.
What does it actually do then?
It basically confirms that family connection. But getting a green card, that's a whole other story.
So there are more steps involved, like what?
Well, it depends. If the relative is already in the U.S. legally and an immigrant visa is available for them, they can file another form, the I-485, to adjust their status.
Okay, so that's for those already here. What about relatives who are still overseas?
If they're outside the U.S., they'll need to apply for an immigrant visa at a U.S. embassy or consulate in their home country.
Got it. So different paths depending on their location. And I'm guessing there's some wait times involved, right?
Oh, absolutely. The immigration process is known for its patience testing wait times. It all depends on the relative's category, their country of origin, and USCIS's workload.
So hurry up and wait, as they say.
Pretty much. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about the temporary relief measures for Lebanese nationals.
Yeah, this has been big news lately. Can you give us the rundown?
Sure thing. The Department of Homeland Security, or DHS, has stepped up to offer some temporary relief options for Lebanese folks living here in the U.S.
Okay, and what sparked this?
It's all in response to that ongoing conflict in Lebanon, the humanitarian crisis over there.
Right, it's been a tough situation for sure.
Absolutely. So DHS has two main programs offering protection: Deferred Enforced Departure, or DED, and a new Temporary Protected Status, or TPS, designation specifically for Lebanon.
Okay, two programs. But what do they actually mean for those who qualify? What are the tangible benefits?
Well, both DED and TPS offer protection from deportation. No one's getting sent back to a dangerous situation. And importantly, folks can apply for work authorization too.
Ah, so they can legally work and support themselves while they're here.
Exactly. It's about providing some stability and opportunity in a really tough time.
Makes sense. So how long will this relief last? Is there an expiration date?
The TPS designation for Lebanon is initially for 18 months.
Okay, so a year and a half of protection. What about DED?
DED is a bit more open-ended. It doesn't have a fixed expiration date. The president can end it at any time, though.
So there's a bit more uncertainty there. But as long as it's in effect, those covered by DED can also apply for those work permits.
You got it. They can get those employment authorization documents, or EADs for short.
Gotcha. So while both provide temporary relief, DED has a bit less predictability in terms of duration. But what happens after those 18 months of TPS are up? What's the long game here?
That's the million-dollar question, and unfortunately, there's no easy answer.
Yeah, I can imagine.
The situation in Lebanon is constantly evolving, so it's hard to predict what the future holds.
So for now, this temporary relief offers some much-needed breathing room.
Exactly. It's a step in the right direction, but it doesn't solve the long-term immigration puzzle.
For sure. Okay, switching gears again. For those eyeing the EB-1 visa, particularly the EB-1A for extraordinary ability, we've got some insights from greencardforselfpetition.com's FAQ section.
Oh yeah, they have a great FAQ section. What did they address this time?
A common question: can showcasing your work at exhibitions or performances count as evidence for an EB-1A petition?
Good question. Especially for those in artsy fields, that's like their bread and butter.
Right. So what's the answer? Can they use that kind of evidence?
The answer is a resounding yes, especially if you're in a field like art, music, performance studies. Those exhibitions and performances are essentially your portfolio.
Makes sense. So putting your work out there can actually boost your immigration chances.
It can. USCIS recognizes those events as proof of your professional achievements and recognition. But here's the catch.
Oh, there's always a catch.
It can't just be any random gig. The event itself needs to have some prestige and recognition within your field.
So it needs to be a big deal, not just your friend's basement show.
Right. USCIS is looking for those prestigious events, the ones that carry real weight.
Makes sense. Now, what about scientific exhibitions? Do those hold water?
Absolutely, especially if you're invited to present your research or give a demonstration. It all boils down to showing your participation was noteworthy and recognized within the scientific community.
So it's all about showing your work is valued and respected in your field, regardless of whether it's art or science.
Exactly. Now, another question pops up a lot. How can applicants document and present this exhibition or performance evidence effectively?
Yeah, it can't just be a, hey, I was in this show kind of thing, right?
Nope, not at all. You need to tell a story. Paint a picture for USCIS of how significant the event was and what your role was.
Okay, so give them details.
All the details. Talk about the event itself, its reputation in your field, how participants are chosen, any awards or recognition you snagged, any media coverage you received.
So basically, build a narrative that shouts extraordinary ability from the rooftops.
You got it. And never underestimate the power of a good story. USCIS officers are human too. A compelling story can really make your application stand out.
Great advice. So tell a captivating story, back it up with solid evidence, and make sure the event itself has some serious clout.
Exactly. Now, let's move on to another hot topic for those navigating the visa maze, choosing between the EB-1 and EB-2 categories.
Ah, the classic dilemma. Both are popular options for skilled professionals, but they have different vibes.
Right. The EB-1, especially the EB-1A, has been gaining a ton of traction lately because it generally has those crystal clear requirements.
And no labor certification. Music to many ears.
You said it. That whole labor certification process can be a real headache. So the EB-1 can be a smoother ride in that sense.
But it's got to be tough to qualify, right? You have to be at the top of your game for the EB-1A.
Oh, absolutely. You need to prove you're not just skilled, you're exceptional. Think Olympic athlete, renowned scientist, award-winning artist level.
Okay, so the bar is set pretty high.
It is. But here's a bit of good news. Recent updates from USCIS have actually made the EB-1 application process more streamlined and predictable.
Oh, that's interesting. So even though it's challenging, at least the rules are clear. Now, let's not forget about the EB-2 category. It's still a solid option for many skilled professionals, all right?
Definitely. The EB-2, specifically the National Interest Waiver, or NIW, can be a great fit for folks whose work is considered super important to the U.S.
So even if you're not quite at the extraordinary ability level of the EB-1A, the NIW could still be your ticket.
Yep, that's the idea. The NIW is for those whose work has real merit and national importance, even if they don't have a trophy case full of awards.
Gotcha. So how do you convince USCIS your work is in the national interest? What are they looking for?
You need to build a strong case showing how your work will significantly benefit the U.S. And, importantly, you need to show that you're the right person to do it, that you're well-positioned to make it happen.
So it's about demonstrating your potential impact on the U.S. Sounds challenging.
It can be, but it's a worthwhile path for those who meet the criteria.
So for our listeners who are now wondering, okay, which path is right for me?
Right. How do you choose?
Exactly. Any advice?
The best advice is to do your homework. Carefully evaluate your qualifications, think about your career goals, and really dive into the specific requirements of each category.
Okay, so no shortcuts, just careful consideration.
Exactly. And remember, talking to an immigration attorney is always a good move. They can help you make sense of it all and choose the path that aligns with your goals.
Solid advice. Speaking of strategy, we've noticed a new trend popping up in the EB-1A world. Professional PR firms are getting involved.
Oh, yeah, it's fascinating. PR firms are helping EB-1A applicants polish their image and stand out in the crowd.
Really? Like having a PR team for your immigration application? That's wild.
It is. Firms like Baden are helping applicants get media coverage, craft those compelling narratives, and snag those powerful recommendation letters.
Okay, so they're bringing in the big guns. Are recommendation letters that important for the EB-1A?
They can be a game changer. A strong recommendation letter from a big name in your field can really solidify your claims of extraordinary ability.
So it's like having a VIP vouch for you.
Exactly. And it's not just about the number of letters, it's about the quality. You want letters from people USCIS will recognize and respect, folks who really know your work.
So choose your referees wisely.
Got it. Now let's address another big cloud that often comes up. Criminal records and visa violations. How do they affect your chances of getting an NIW?
That's a sensitive but important topic, and greencardforselfpetition.com tackles it head-on in their FAQ.
So can you apply for an NIW if you have a criminal record or past visa violations?
The short answer is yes, you can, but you got to be upfront about it. Transparency is key.
Okay, so don't try to hide anything. But will it hurt your chances?
It can. USCIS wants to make sure you're a good character, trustworthy. A criminal record or visa violation can raise red flags.
So how do you address those issues in a way that doesn't torpedo your application?
It's all about context and showing you've changed. Explain what happened, why it happened, what you've done to make things right, and demonstrate your good character since then.
So own up to it, show remorse, and prove you've grown from the experience. Exactly. It's about demonstrating rehabilitation and a genuine commitment to making positive contributions to the U.S. It really is. You need to convince USCIS you've learned from whatever happened, You've become a better person since then.
Right. It's about demonstrating good character and showing you're ready to be a responsible member of U.S. society. Now, let's zoom in on a trend we've been seeing. The EB-1 category, especially the EB-1A, seems to be getting a lot of buzz.
It's true. The EB-1A, which is designed for those who can show extraordinary ability in their field, has been gaining popularity, and I can see why it offers a pretty straightforward path to permanent residency.
And in a lot of cases, you can skip that dreaded labor certification process, right?
Exactly. Labor certification can be a real pain, so the EB-1 can be a much smoother ride.
But let's be real, the EB-1A is for the top dogs, right? You need to prove you're not just good at what you do, but exceptional.
You got it. The EB-1A is all about showcasing that you've achieved sustained national or international acclaim in your field.
Think like Olympic athletes, renowned scientists, Award-winning artists,
Yeah.
people who are at the pinnacle of their professions.
Exactly. So how do you actually prove those extraordinary abilities to USCIS? What kind of evidence will make them say, wow, this person is the real deal?
Yeah, what are they looking for?
It's like building a highlight reel of your career, showcasing your most impressive achievements. Think major awards, publications in top journals, media coverage in big-name publications.
Okay, so things that show you're recognized and respected in your field.
Exactly. You can also include things like invitations to speak at international conferences, leadership positions in professional organizations, anything that shows the impact of your work.
So it's like a resume, but on steroids.
That's a great way to put it. It's about focusing on the quality and impact of your contributions.
And I imagine telling a good story helps too, right?
Absolutely. Weaving your accomplishments into a compelling narrative can really make your application stand out.
Make it memorable. Now, this might sound daunting, especially if you're not used to bragging about yourself. Any advice for those who might be struggling to showcase their achievements?
Remember, this is your time to shine. Don't be shy about highlighting your successes. This is your chance to convince USCIS why you deserve a place among the best and brightest.
Right, this is your moment to make a great first impression.
Exactly. And if you're feeling lost in the process, don't hesitate to reach out for help. An experienced immigration attorney can be an invaluable guide.
Always a good idea to have an expert in your corner. Now let's circle back to something we touched on earlier, the role of public relations in the EB-1A application process.
Right. We're seeing more and more applicants working with PR firms to boost their profiles and visibility.
It's an interesting trend. Is this becoming a must-have for EB-1A applicants?
It's definitely becoming more common, especially as the EB-1A category gets more and more competitive.
So it's like having a PR team for your immigration application.
Pretty much. But it's important to remember that PR can enhance a strong application, but it can't create one out of thin air.
Right, so it's not about faking it. It's about showcasing your genuine accomplishments in the best light.
Exactly. And there are definitely ethical considerations to keep in mind. Any PR effort should be honest and transparent.
No smoke and mirrors, just strategic storytelling.
Got it. Now let's address a sensitive but important topic: criminal records and visa violations.
Right, we've gotten a lot of questions about how these issues might affect someone's chances of getting an NIW.
And the answer is, it's complicated.
Exactly. While it's possible to apply for an NIW even with a criminal record or past visa violations, transparency is crucial. USCIS will take those issues seriously as they could raise concerns about your character and whether you'll follow U.S. laws in the future.
So it's not a deal breaker, but it's definitely something you need to address head on. Absolutely. The best approach is to provide context and show that you've rehabilitated yourself. Explain the circumstances of the incident, any steps you've taken to make things right, and prove you've been a good citizen since then.
It's about owning your past, showing remorse, and demonstrating that you've grown from the experience.
Exactly. You want to convince USCIS that you've learned from your mistakes and you're committed to being a positive, contributing member of U.S. society.
Right. It's about showing them you're on the right track now. But let's be honest, some offenses are more serious than others. How does USCIS differentiate between a minor infraction and a serious crime?
They take a holistic approach, looking at the nature and severity of the offense, how long ago it happened, and what you've done since then to prove you've turned things around.
So a speeding ticket from 10 years ago probably won't raise too many eyebrows.
Probably not, especially if you have a solid track record of positive contributions since then.
But something more serious, like a DUI or a felony, that's a different story, right?
Right. Those types of offenses are definitely going to be more problematic.
So what should someone do if they have a more serious offense on their record?
In those cases, it's absolutely crucial to talk to an immigration attorney. They can help you understand the potential impact of your situation and guide you through the process.
Solid advice. Now let's unpack a concept that often causes confusion in the NIW application process. National interest. It sounds pretty broad. How does USCIS actually define it?
You're right, it is broad, but essentially they're looking for people whose work has substantial merit and importance to the U.S.
Okay, so it needs to benefit the country as a whole, not just the individual.
Exactly. And you need to show USCIS that you're well-positioned to advance your work and make a real impact in the U.S.
So it's about demonstrating your potential to make a difference in a way that aligns with U.S. interests.
Exactly. It could be in any field: science, technology, arts, culture, business,
Yeah.
as long as it contributes to the advancement of U.S. society.
So curing a disease, developing a groundbreaking technology, creating art that inspires social change. those would all be considered in the national interest.
Those are great examples. And remember, it's not just about the field itself, it's about your specific contributions and what you can achieve in the future.
You need to convince USCIS that your work is exceptional, you're a leader in your field, and your presence in the U.S. is key to advancing your work.
That's the heart of it. You need to make a strong case for why you're the right person to do this work and why the U.S. is the best place to do it.
Got it. Now let's circle back to the international entrepreneur role, which has undergone some major changes recently. These updates could be a game changer for aspiring entrepreneurs.
You're absolutely right. These changes are your goals.
Great advice. And to our listeners, we want to remind you that you can find a wealth of information and resources, including DIY green card self-petition packets, over at greencardforselfpetition.com. Their weekly newsletter is an amazing resource for staying on top of all the latest immigration news and updates.
It's like having a personal immigration advisor in your inbox.
Exactly. So be sure to check them out. And to all of our listeners, wherever you are in your immigration journey, we're cheering you on.
We're rooting for you.
Here's to making those American dreams a reality.
Cheers to that.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of U.S. immigration. We'll be back next week with more updates and insights to help you navigate your path to the U.S. Until then, keep those dreams alive.
Thank you for listening to a podcast by greencardselfpetition.com. Visit greencardselfpetition.com for do-it-yourself packets. We aim to provide the collective experience of numerous applicants who have successfully self-petitioned for their green cards without employer sponsorship, in either the EB-1A, Extraordinary Ability, or EB-2, NIW National Interest Waiver categories. Our DIY packets are designed to assist you in your self-petition journey.